Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the host of the Video Addict New Release Roundup.
And I'm Don Fisher, one of the head critics at Geek Vibes Nation.
And I'm really excited because we are talking about Influencer, which is a new social media horror film. And I have to say, I'm kind of a sucker for these. It's sort of like this tech horror is kind of my favorite sort of like horror subgenre. Um, but before I get into my thoughts, what did you initially think of this movie?
Well, I had so me and the director Curtis David Harder, we did an interview like 2 years ago. So we're
Hmm.
friends on Facebook and Instagram, and I saw him, posting the trailers and the posters, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. He always does good work, and I know, and it's weird to say, but like I was pleasantly surprised, even though I wasn't surprised because his work is good. But it was like, yo, this really works. I was, and it's very he. There's always the social aspect that he likes to incorporate with his work, and this one definitely had it. We're all very social media heavy people, and it makes you think twice before you start posting everything online. But I mean, it's intense, and there's this kind of bait and switch that happens that I mean, it does a lot of things really well.
Yeah, and I have to say that I like this movie, and I'll get more into this later. But there's some things where I think it doesn't maybe quite stick the landing for me. But I overall really liked it. I think where the movie's biggest strength is like the characterization of the oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name. I'm looking it up right now. She was like the Madison
Oh
was
yeah.
the influencer at the beginning, and I think I've definitely seen like social media horror where it's like it almost comes off a little misogynistic
Mm,
because it feels like these movies have to sort of punish these women for using their beauty and their
right.
agency to, sort of game a system that's already kind of not fair to them. So, um, I don't like social media horror where it comes off like a boomer lecturing me about, having an Insta account or something. That being said, I feel like for the most part, and I'll get into the caveat with that, I don't feel like they ever go that route, which I think is easier. I think it's easier to sort of like mock and shame somebody like Madison. And while I do think the movie kind of critically examines her work as shallow, and I think maybe that's maybe could have used more nuance. I think overall it doesn't come off like that shallow. Like they we get to see Madison as a person, and I won't go like I'll keep this spoiler free, but she definitely has a nice arc or a satisfying arc, I'll just say. But um yeah, so what do you think about like social media horror movies in general? Where do you think this kind of lies within like um if this is a really good example for you or like maybe somewhere in between.
Yeah, I definitely think that out of most that I've seen, that this one does, like you said, kind of the better job of like, you know, she doesn't, she's reluctant, and then once someone tells you like, hey, this could work for you, you kind of, oh, I mean, why not? If I can live this kind of cool life and not have to work a 9 to 5, I mean, we'd all do it. If I was pretty, I'm out here doing the same thing, and I think it kind of shows that it goes like, I don't know. Everybody. Well, initially we're all weird on social media, and we used to always see the Instagram boyfriend get made fun of, the guy who's taking the pictures of his girl. But sometimes that's what that's what the pictures that get the most likes. It is somebody else taking the photo. It is it's not the selfie, unless you're like one of the top tier, you're a Kardashian or something where you can just post whatever you want to and get a million likes. And most of the time it's gonna be somebody else. And so the way that her character is crafted that way, and then along with the other side where you have I can't remember the other victim, Jennifer, maybe, where she had the
Yeah.
cult essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, we see those as well, So it I do kind of like the way that it put the kind of the two biggest niche social media followings that we see, and broadcast it in a way that you go, okay, yeah, I've seen that before, and I understand now how this person can get to where they're going. But then you also show like with Madison's character, where she's not as happy as she'd like to be. Everything's not always, you know, rosy all the time. And then there's always a person who's watching and goes, I want that life as well. And then we see what happens.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think there's a moment. If I'm recalling this correctly, she's like shooting a sponsorship video, and she has it turned on. She's smiling, and then when she's done, I feel like that mask kind of comes off, and you really see that this is kind of hollow for her. And again, I feel like in a way it still does sort of lean into that, like um influencers are vapid and unhappy and unfulfilled. Like there's no sort of middle ground. Like there's no like, I did really like this and it helped me again sort of game a system that is already unfair, and I don't find it satisfying anymore. In the movie, it almost feels like, you know, it just throws it all out saying that like influencers, inherently all of them are leading this vapid, shallow existence. And again, I feel like if the director would have taken this maybe just a little bit further, um, and really kind of gave a little more nuance with exactly like, I don't know, it just seems very black and white to me. Seems very
Yeah,
much like, even though it does for the most part avoid some of the more like grosser sort of misogynistic takes some of these movies can have, it's still kind of shame, it sort of like vocation shames her at the same time. So
yeah.
like it kind of wants, I don't know, like I think maybe one of my favorite recent examples of this done really extremely well, and it's no shocker that this was written by, I mean, the example that I'm talking about being particularly good was written by a woman, is female led, is Follow Her, which actually by the time this comes out will, I'm fine with giving a little plug because I really like that movie, but it's going to be on digital. And I also got to talk to the lead writer slash actor, and the director, again, all female led, and Lucas. Luke Cook's in it, which is great. I got to
Oh
talk
yeah.
to him as well. But in that movie, like it does sort of show the downside of what the main character does for a living, but it never like shames her. It never like throws out the whole industry as vapid and shallow. And honestly, like it comes out like where the influencer in that movie is a complete fucking badass, and she's ready and willing to fight, and there's some degree to that in this as well, which again I appreciate. But I just think like something like Follow Her is a like a much better example of that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, it's framed creatively from a woman's perspective. Like,
Yeah, this one could have been. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk recently from other influencers that are like, pretty big influencers, and they kind of go, the one recently, I can't remember who it was, but they were like, yeah, I know some influencers that, their brand lies in their ability to be attractive, but then at the end of the day, they have no real discernible talent that could be used elsewhere. Like if once their followers fall off or the likes fall off, they have no way to reel people back in because they relied so much on the looks. And maybe this is that focus in this film was that dynamic. I mean, we do get a little bit of, like you said, with CW once she has trouble with her second victim because she's not this ditzy person that she believes her to be. So her kind of easy plan that she does doesn't work out as well, and that's where the movie starts to kind of pick up a lot, where everything's going wrong and she has to cover her tracks and do all these things. And I mean, she's my favorite part of the film just because it almost seems like it's the jealousy. She without it being said, I feel like her character is somewhat subconscious, a little jealous, and that's kind of her motivation to do what she's doing because she's like, you know, why do they deserve these things when, and I have, this birthmark that I think looks badass. Like the first time I saw, I was like, that's like weirdly enough, I was like, I always when I was little, I always wanted like a scar over my eye because I always thought that was cool as shit. So when I saw that birthmark, I was like, that's fucking cool. But I feel like after I even looked up the actress and looked at some of her story, and she talks about that. So I feel like that was kind of an unspoken motivation to her character.
yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. That's another thing of like I kind of wish they would have addressed that more,
Yeah.
or maybe even just sort of not that I need things spoon fed to me, but like I think there was something there that they could have maybe addressed a little more
Yeah. Yeah.
forwardly. I mean, I understand that, that's a very sensitive topic, but also you're in a movie about this very thing, so you're point blank addressing it, but then you're not really going there. Like, I don't know, it seems like I like this movie a lot, but I would say there's a few things that really kind of hold it back for me. Like, I gave it a 7 out of 10, which is probably generous, but I thought the directing was really well done. I thought from a technical standpoint, everything was very sound. I just think, there's besides, well, let me back up. I could definitely forgive maybe some like less nuanced approach with the influencer culture. But I just like from a narrative perspective, I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the second act,
Yeah.
especially when, you know, like they're in was it CW's house,
Yeah.
and like there's some moments there that seem like they could have really mined some more tension, and everything just sort of wraps up like way quicker than I thought. And um again, it's tricky without spoilers, but like one character exits quite abruptly, and I feel like you still could have like used that person to sort of like mine some more tension.
Yeah.
And I just feel like stuff starts to unravel in the second act, but then I feel like it sort of makes up for it in the finale. I know I can't talk about it, but goddamn, that finale was awesome. So do we want to just give a uh spoiler notice at this point?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we're far enough in that we could, if you've made it this far and you haven't seen it, spoilers are coming.
Yeah, and I'll try to timestamp when the spoilers are over. So y'all can just skip that if you want. But this is your spoiler warning. I want to get into the ending. So we find out that CW, the character that was like dropped off on this island, um, we was like pretty sure she was dead. She's not dead. She is very much alive and thriving. They kind of don't explain how, but that's fine. I'm not going to be that like picky, but um, it's such a badass confrontation, and again, it sort of like makes me feel like, okay, this movie again is maybe demeaning influencer culture in a way that's just sort of black and white, but at least they're giving her character like agency, and she's a
Yeah.
badass, and that helps. I think that's again where the movie sort of got me back on its side, and I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, where it's like she's not exactly what you expect her to be. Because I mean, and I think it shows it to where when there's a little flashback, you realize like she wasn't set out to be an influencer. So apparently she had another life. But since she had this big following, CW's like, oh, well, she's just this little miss, get likes and do brand content. So once I think I love that shot though, when CW gets off the boat, sees the fish on the stick, and she's like, shit, like
Yeah.
she's survived, and you see the all the little tally marks on that log that they foreshadowed beforehand, and she's like, ah shit, I have to go see if what Madison's doing, and she is heated. And I think that it kind of also shows that even if she was this vapid influencer, that the human will to live is a lot stronger than we give it credit for. That just because you may not have like formal survival training, if you want to live, you're gonna find a way.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a great point. And I think that like again, I think like CW, in her contempt for these people, is her undoing, right? It's like her thinking, okay, because people are influencers, they are easy marks, and maybe that's, you know, like I don't ever feel like the movie's making a blanket statement on that. Like everybody's different, and maybe some marks are easier than others, but I think she kind of learns that like, you know, there are, I mean, there are like really like badass people in this profession, not only women but men, and gender non-conforming people. So I feel like it would be really interesting. I would love to talk to the director, not as like an argument, but I would love to just sort of like maybe get hit like, because of course I'm missing like creator intent is a big thing, and um there would be definitely things I would be kind of curious to talk to him about, which is like, do you feel like you could have added maybe some more nuance? You know, did you have any like women ghostwriters to maybe give you some sort of perspective into that world? I think like if you also want to see another great, I mean, fantastic, like movie on this subject, Cam, it's such a generic title, but it's called Cam. It's I believe it's still streaming on Netflix. It is that and Follow Her, I think, are the best influencer sort of thrillers that don't demean or talk down to, or I mean even really like judge the profession, because again, I feel like I don't have a problem with, women and other people, gaming a system that's not fair to begin with, especially to women and minorities, and like more power to them, really. But the other thing that I didn't like, and again, this is something that I would maybe talk to the director about if I could, like the catty gay best friend. I was like, dude, fuck off with that shit. So yeah, I mean, because I'll just be like super frank. Like I the catty gay best friend is such a tired, gross trope
Yeah,
that
yeah.
like I it almost made me sort of rage quit, but then I was like, okay, you know what? Like, just we're gonna get through this. But it's not in there enough to like really totally spoil the movie, of course, because I gave it a 7 out of 10, but like it still sort of tarnishes an otherwise solid movie. Like again, the movie's not great because I feel like, if even if you kind of set aside maybe some of the more like cringier stuff, like it does have kind of narrative problems that maybe another draft could have fixed. But I don't know. It's just
Now
stuff.
I felt the same way about that character. I was like, I've I know so many people, and very few people do I know fit that exact archetype. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's weird. It's only on TV. It's really only on TV, and I don't know if maybe. I mean, it could be based off somebody that somebody knows. It could be that person in particular, or it could just be like they're like, "Hey, we want to add this character, and let's just run with the run of the mill thing we've always witnessed on TV." And it's weird because that character from the black community, that's normally more of a black girl character, the way that the things played out, than a black gay character.
Yeah.
Because I have a large amount of gay friends, and they're if we were in a room, you're not gonna know who's gay, so you don't have to, turn up what you think is what a gay person is supposed to be, or how you perceive them, because it's not always the case. So yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, and then they almost didn't. The friendship almost didn't feel real. You know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think that's where it really loses itself. Is like, are they friends? Because they don't seem like they're very good friends. I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, I'm not femme shaming anybody either.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course.
and it's just I feel like it just
There's
it
got to be another way to convey that this is the gay best friend besides that.
yeah, and the whole I don't know. I just feel like there was a million different ways they could have conveyed that, and I'm even trying to think if they could have just not had that and still sort of got to the same conclusion. I don't know. Again, I mean it's in the movie, so it's completely valid to critique. It would, like, again, it would be kind of interesting to talk to the director to get his point of view of like why that was like necessary. Like I guess if I'm trying to do some like gymnastics to kind of figure it out, it's just he's highlighting how there are people in this industry that are very vapid and just like the drama and the gossip and stuff. But again, like I don't know, it's just I guess it makes me less mad because we do have really good representation now. So even when you get some clunky ones, it's like it's more palatable. Like I just think the catty gay best friend that has no real like meaning in the story is
Yeah, yeah.
so lame. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, but again, I it's unfortunate, but I don't think it like it's egregious enough to like really just hate the movie. I just think it kind of like ruins what I think is like I do see some nuance in there, even though I think it could have maybe taken that a little bit farther. And I like this movie, but it just like it's also super frustrating because I feel like I completely see where they're going, and there are parts that I really like, but I'm like, it does it really completely come together like I think it could? No, if I'm being honest. Did I still have an overall good time? Yeah. It was I was never bored. I was always invested. So, that's kind of where I think like my 7 out of 10 came from. But if you had to rate this out of 10, what would you give it?
Mine's around the same. It'd be about a 7.
Mhm.
Um, and part of that too is like I believe the actress who plays CW, I think her name was Cassandra Nod. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. But I think she did a great job because it's it's also, I guess, kind of plays into the kind of social media thing of you can't always trust a pretty face.
Mhm.
She seems like unassuming because it's like this young hot girl, she's talking to another young hot girl, and you're like, oh, like we're just out here in Thailand living our best life, and then she might off you because she don't like you, and because I thought that was weird at first. It felt I was like, you just in this foreign country, you don't know anybody, and you just kind of befriend somebody because they're attractive, and we tend to trust attractive people. So I guess that's also another side of that cautionary tale. Just because you deem them attractive or safe, they're still a stranger.
I think the other really interesting point I also wanted to bring up before we kind of wrap is like I I thought it was really fascinating, and again, I really wish this would have maybe been maybe dug into a little bit deeper. But like at one point, the scuzzy boyfriend of Madison says to CW, you could be. He's like, I could make you an influencer. I think you have it. I think you could actually sort of like be part of this community. And again, is it just, you know, like CW is lashing out to the pretty girls because she thinks she couldn't be one of them? Does she want to be one of them? Like at one point, she kind of does become one of them because she sort of takes over their account. Um, so I don't know. It's interesting, but again, these are like narrative points that I think if somebody were to maybe just take a little more time to polish stuff like that, like as a viewer, I shouldn't be like I'm all for some ambiguity. That's great. Like don't get me wrong, like um I don't need everything sort of just handed to me. Sometimes I do like to kind of think about like things like that, but these are like narrative points that should not be ambiguous. They should be a little bit more like fleshed out. And again, that's where I think some of the shaggy plotting kind of shows.
And I also think that the film could have gone a completely different way depending on the focus, because once we get a little bit of the um AI deep fake kind of thing, the whole movie could have been kind of focused on that there's this network of people who kidnap or do whatever, and everything that you've been seeing on social media has been fake this whole entire time. Because that scene, I was like, that's so crazy that she
Mhm.
mentions like no one would miss you, and then follows that up with, I'm just gonna like live your life for a minute, deep fake your face onto my face, and no one knows the difference. And I'm like, that is a terrifying future that
Yeah.
that can happen.
No, that's a great point. It's something that I didn't even really think about, but like, yeah, like that is another layer that maybe could have been, explored a little bit further. But yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say, so if y'all do like movies like this, and you're looking for like some other things to kind of watch with it. I mean, again, I mentioned Cam on Netflix. Follow her, which is gonna be out on digital by the it's out now, so by the time this airs, it'll definitely be out on like VOD and stuff. I highly recommend that. I'll link my interviews with those the talent involved with that in the description. So if you wanted to check that out, but Superhost is another really fun one that's on Shudder. That is a very different but really fun take on social media horror. And I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that I really recommend, but those
I
are really.
know, what's that, Spree, which is more
Oh,
kind of like the viral fame aspect of social media.
yeah, that's a good one too. And yeah, I'll you know I will link in the description these movies where y'all can stream them if you want. They're really fun. I will watch just about anything that's sort of like horror, found footage, like horror tech, like tech horror stuff like that. I love stuff like that. So yeah, I'll give you all a good jumping off point if you're wanting to kind of see more of this subgenre. But before we wrap up, did you have any final thoughts about this movie?
Um, I definitely think that if they wanted to, they could do some kind of short or even some kind of sequel from a different perspective could be possible that could dive into maybe more of the aspects that we were talking about. And maybe if they want to do another one where it does focus on like the AI and people stealing people's content, and they could do, there's a lot of things they could do. And I think there's enough there that they could pull from it. Um, but yeah, I think this film is definitely worth a watch. Um, it's interesting. I think it's a conversation starter. And yeah, I thought it was a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I guess for me, final thoughts. It is an overall good movie. I think it's a well-made, well-directed movie. The acting is stellar. I just want to like stress that.
Yeah.
It's really well acted, well shot. Again, from a technical standpoint, I think the movie is really solid. I just think that there's some elements that could have used a lot more work, and we need to just retire the. I mean, again, I don't want this to come off like I'm like femme shaming or anything, because that is a shitty thing that people do, and it's like telling people how they're not being gay right or something. And I'm not doing that, but I just think that like it's a shitty trope that I feel like is so easy. It's shitty because it's very lazy. It's lazy writing, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Again, I would love to have a really good constructive talk with the director, see where he was coming from, because that again, creator perspective is very important. That's a big piece of the puzzle that I don't have, obviously. But um, besides that, again, overall really good. That finale, I feel like if the finale didn't stick the landing, I probably would not have like rated this movie as high as I did. Like,
Right.
because again, I think the pieces are there. I just think they don't come together as maybe cohesively as they could. But again, I had a good time. Like you, I think it was an enjoyable ride. Um, and I like that you pointed out that this is a really good conversation starter movie where it does get you thinking about some of these topics in a more kind of interesting way. So yeah, I like any movie that can kind of do that. So I do appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I guess I would say overall fine movie. I will also link where that is streaming. Um I think it's streaming on Shudder,
I believe so.
but I will link all of that in the description so y'all can just check out that movie, some of the other ones that we talked about. I'm glad you mentioned Spree because I completely forgot about that one, but that one's fun. It has the guy from Stranger Things, Steve, blanking one. Is it like show something?
Yeah, Joe Carey.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, so I believe that was on Shudder, but again, I'll check all that out and I'll link in the description so y'all can maybe make that a double or triple feature or marathon these movies or whatnot. So I think that'll do it for this review. As always, any likes, comments, shares, all of that stuff's really awesome. If you're not already subscribed, please do. We put out great content on a regular basis. Like everybody at GVN is rock stars. So also check out our the website and thanks for hanging out with us.